Europe's economy is in big trouble. People in Greece are now emptying their bank accounts. That's a run on the bank. That's when Mr. Potter comes in and he says, I'll give you 50 cents on the dollar, George. Wanted to bring back Jim Rogers to tell us where we're headed. He's a guy who I really appreciate because he will tell you the truth. As I said before we went into the break, he doesn't speak a word of bullcrap. We've had him on a couple of programs when we were over at Fox, and honored to have you back here. Jim Rogers, legendary investor, chairman of Rogers Holdings, also author of the book, A Gift to My Children. Jim, economic collapse with the euro. Will that lead to a recession?
That will lead to the end of the world as we know it. That will certainly lead to the end of the world as Washington, D.C. knows it. There's no question about that. We do live in very perilous times, so I hope you're very careful and I hope you're prepared. You know why I'm late getting here? I stopped to buy some gold on the way. I'm not kidding, I did.
Did you really?
Yeah, I'll show it to you. You want to see it?
Yeah.
Now, the IRS will be over here after both of us.
Who's got like a billy club? We can take him. Is he really? You really? Is he?
Yeah, no, that's gold. That's a Canadian and that's a Chinese.
So these are new.
I have some old ones. You want to see my old ones too?
Yeah. Do you buy old ones too?
No, I don't buy the collector's type, numismatic. No.
Yeah, I do because I don't trust the government, but I don't trust the government in anything. I think they'll take anything.
Well, they will. They certainly will. But the problem with the new in the world, it might happen, where there's so much chaos and turmoil, that they're not going to pay a premium for old and rare coins.
Oh, I don't care. I just want something at the end. I just want something.
Well, that'll be at the end. Everybody knows what that is. You'll be able to sell it, barter it if you have to. If it gets this bad.
Do you remember when Roosevelt, Roosevelt in, what was it, 33? 33.
I don't remember, but
yeah, no,
I read about
I know. But I mean, you know history well enough. You remember history well enough to know that. And they would put you to jail for, what, 10 years for having this?
Yep, you couldn't open a safety deposit box without a member of the government watching you. Nobody could go to their safety deposit boxes unless an officer of the United States government was there to watch you open it.
You think that's coming again?
Well, I don't think they'll take gold away because in those days gold was in the monetary system. What they're more likely to do this time is take your pension plan or your IRA. You know, they'll say, we're doing you a favor. What we're going to do in these, well, they always say that.
Right, yeah.
Come on, Glenn, they know they're always helping you. We're here from the government to help
we're
you.
To help.
For
we're
God's
help.
sakes, what's wrong with you? So what they'll say is, your pension has been fluctuating, there's been a lot of turmoil in the markets. What we're going to do, we're going to take your pension and we're going to give you a 30-year government bond. And we'll pay you 3%, 4%.
That's fantastic.
That way you
Could you do that to me again,
Yes,
Mr.
that's what I mean.
Agent?
We're here to help you. We're here to help you. We're
that's
here to
great.
save you. Then you'll have the guarantee of the United States government bond, and you don't have to fluctuate.
No, why do you
it's
say
hard
that
for me
way?
to keep laughing. I know
Okay,
it's hard to say
all
with a straight face.
I've been, hedge funds are going up and they're just buying up farmland. Now, why would they do that?
Well, because there's shortages of food coming, serious shortages of food coming, for a variety of
Are
reasons.
you a conspiracy theorist? Because I've heard the government says these are all conspiracy theories.
What, the people buying farms?
Yeah, there's food shortages coming, that the government would...
Glenn, first of all, the government says that because the farmers are Republicans. And the government doesn't like Republicans. No, but you must understand, food prices have been disastrous for 30 years. Agriculture has been a disaster for 30 years. The average age of farmers in America is 58.
I think it's 62.
All right, we'll split the difference. It's 60.
All right.
Whatever it is. In 10 years, they'll be 70.
Right.
The average age of farmers in Japan is 66. The average age in Australia is 58. The highest rate of suicide in England is among agricultural people. The highest rate of suicide in India, hundreds of thousands of farmers commit suicide every year.
Why?
Agriculture has been a disaster. People cannot make a living as a farmer. So they're starving or committing suicide or doing something else. You know, in America, we have more people who study physical education than study agriculture.
So what? Okay, so let's go through.
Well, let me just finish.
Okay,
Two last sentences. So we're running out of farmers in the first place, and if the price of, because food prices have been so low, so the prices are going to go very high to attract in labor, capital, management. so that farmers can make a living again. What you should do if you get tired of TV is become a farmer. That's where the money's going to be.
Oh, who says I'm not? All right. Take the average American through the difference and try to illustrate as much as you can. I tried to do it with grapes of wrath. Illustrate as much as you can the difference between a recession, how people will feel, a recession, a depression, and collapse.
Well, a recession is when your neighbor loses his job. And a depression is when you lose your job. And collapse is when nobody has a job and there are people foraging in the streets. Happened in Argentina 10 years ago. It happened in Germany in the early 20s.
It never happened here. This is the United States of America. I try to say that. People actually say these things to me, Jim. It's crazy. It's never going to happen here. It's the United States of America. I'm like, oh.
Well, we've had periods of great turmoil in the United States. Do you remember Cox's Army back in the 30s when a military reserve veteran led many soldiers, ex-soldiers, marched on Washington because they couldn't work. There was no money. Things were desperate. In the end, the government bought them off. But they had thousands, tens of thousands, scores of thousands of ex-soldiers marching on Washington, demanding that they get taken care of.
I just bought an old book from the Civil War period, and it was a collection of things that people had done in the South. North and the South. Like the North had a hard time getting cotton. So how do we mend? How do we make our own fabric? What do we do? Medicines. What did they do? I mean, it's crazy stuff, but it has happened before here in America.
It certainly has. In the war between the states. Do you remember the song about a greenback dollar? That's because they were issuing pretty worthless paper money. That was the Northern government was doing that. Do you remember the Continental? You remember the expression, ain't worth a Continental? Continental Dam? That was the currency. That was the Continental Congress issued Continental dollars, which became worthless.
My gosh, I remember my grandfather saying that. It's not worth a Continental Dam.
Well, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
That comes from American history. So when people say it can't happen here, it has happened. Do you remember the Everly Brothers or somebody used to sing the song about not worth a greenback dollar? Don't
Jim,
give a damn?
I'm 21 myself. I don't remember any of these things.
Oh, well, okay. I'm old enough to remember all these things from American history. The greenback dollar was because Lincoln was issuing greenback dollars to pay for instead of gold, issuing paper money to pay for the war. And of course, in the South, the Confederate money became worthless when they lost the war.
All right, so take me through, first of all, I did a little thing the other day on China. Now the Fed is the biggest guarantor of our debt, bigger than China, which, help me out because I'm not an expert like you. He said we'd never monetize our debt. Isn't that monetizing our debt?
They've been buying our bonds. That's monetizing our debt.
Right,
Yes,
okay, so
Mr. Bernanke said on national TV that he would never monetize the debt.
And they have.
And they have. And then
Right.
actually somebody sort of tripped him up and said, aren't you monetizing this debt? And he said, yes. In effect, we're monetizing the debt. And they are. When the government buys our own bonds,
Right.
that's called monetizing the debt.
Right, right. You and I would call it writing bad checks.
I'd call it monetizing the debt.
No, but I mean, if we were doing it in our life, we're writing a check to ourselves to money we don't have.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's exactly
All
right.
right. So I'm very clear the resources that China has to be able to be good for debt. You know, they got all those factories, and I hear they have a few people and everything else, resources around the world. What does the Fed do? I mean, isn't the Fed, in effect, with all these bailouts and everything else, aren't they just paying themselves?
Then they're paying themselves and they're trying to retain their jobs. They're not looking after you or me, and they're also trying to take care of their friends in the banking community. When the head of a major bank calls up and says, save us, save us, save us, they take the call and they do something. You know, if a plumber from Iowa calls up the Fed, they don't take the call. They don't care about the plumbers in Iowa, but if the bankers from Wall Street call, they take the call. But they got to keep their own jobs too, and so they're worried about their own jobs. I guess they really think that what they're doing is good. sitting here on the outside, I cannot conceive of how this could be good for America or good for the world. But that's what they're doing. They're taking us down the drain.
Well, they're too far down the road now. I mean, now it's kind of like, I mean, now they're just playing for time, don't you think? That maybe a miracle will happen. I mean, you have to know
Yes,
that this isn't going to work.
You know who's going to save us? The Tooth Fairy. You just hang on. The Tooth Fairy is going to come around. After the next election,
right.
The Tooth Fairy is going to come around, and everything is going to be okay.
Okay.
Don't worry.
I believe you.
But in my day, the Tooth Fairy brought you a silver dime. Now she's going to bring you a fake dime.
You hear about the guy who bought all the pennies? Do you hear that? Was it pennies or nickels that bought all it was.
I knew a guy in the 60s who bought, in the 80s, who bought a lot of pennies and melted them down.
Yeah, no, there's a guy who, I think it's nickels. I can't remember which one it is, but he bought an extraordinary amount of
nickels.
And he said it's
melt them down.
Yeah, it's worth more.
Yeah, but they made that illegal.
I don't know.
Somebody better call him up. Because,
yeah, I know. I don't think
Congress, in its wisdom, this is good for us.
I don't think he melted down. I think he has them. He has them someplace.
Well, if he just has them,
yeah,
it's okay.
Right.
But the government, to take care of us, it's good for us. They made it illegal to melt down your pennies. They made it illegal to melt down your coins. It's just for your own good.
Yeah, sure.
It's for your own good.
Okay. All right. Let me go through what is going to happen in Europe. How do you see Europe?
Well, it's more the same, Glenn. What they're going to do, they're going to continue to push the problem. They hope to get through the next election, and if they can bail everybody out for a while, this is going to lead to disaster, mind you. What's going to happen is, well, first of all, you cannot solve a problem of too much debt with more debt. I mean, to me, it's just staggering that grown-ups can say something like that out loud. But they do. And you look at them, now, are they lying or are they just fools? In the end, I think they're just fools. I used to think they were lying. Now I think that they're really, literally fools. So it's going to pile
I think they're
up.
Criminals.
Well, that too. Some of them,
foolish criminals.
Some of them are definitely criminals. But
yeah.
What's going to happen is the debt's going to get higher and higher. Right now, you could solve the problem, but they're not. They're going to try to solve the problem by pushing it out to the future.
Okay. Well,
and eventually,
wait.
Just you wait.
Right.
In one moment, in a minute, or in a few years.
You from Texas?
No, I'm from Alabama.
From Alabama.
I grew up in Alabama. Are you from Texas?
I'm in about 7 days, but I'm not counting. I'm moving to Texas.
Oh, are you? Well,
yeah.
Well,
I listen. You remember when you were on Fox, and you were like, New York's going to melt down.
Yeah. Oh, that's why you moved to Texas?
I listened to you.
Smart man.
Yeah.
Smart man. When I moved to Asia.
I know. Well, I'm on my way.
But eventually, the market's going to say to the Europeans, we're not putting up with this anymore. We're not going to lend you any more money. And then we're going to have, what did the Washington Post say? Then we're going to have a recession.
Yeah.
then we're going to have a recession.
Okay.
Right. When the market says
okay.
to Europe and to America, we're not going to lend you any more money, then we'll have our recession.
Okay. Back in just a second. Okay, Jim. Let's start with. You said a minute ago we could solve this problem. But you have a society in Europe and an increasing society here in America that doesn't want to solve it. The way to solve the problem is to everybody go, okay, this didn't work. It would have been nice if we could have had these big pensions and we could have the work play dates that we have and everything else, but it won't work. And we can't have the houses, we can't have the cars, we can't have this lifestyle. But nobody wants to admit that. So how do you fix this without civil unrest?
Well, you're going to have civil unrest. You're going to have social unrest. We're already having social unrest, and you're going to have more of it for the very reasons you're saying, because the money's running out. Eventually, the money runs out, and somebody has to pay for it. You could, in Europe, right now, the Germans, most governments in Europe still have some credibility. And if they pulled everybody into a room and said, okay, this has not worked, you're going to fail, you're going to lose everything, you're going to lose a lot, you're going to stay in business. We're going to ring fence the system. Banks are still going to clear checks. Banks are still going to make savings accounts good. But we're going to have a lot of pain. A lot of people are going to lose a lot of money. But in the end, we'll come out of it. Now, you could still do that now. In 3 years, you won't be able to do it. Because the government, the market's going to say, we don't care, Mrs. Merkel. We don't believe you anymore. We won't give you any more money. And that's when you have the risk of systemic failure. That's when you have not a recession, not a depression, but you have a collapse of the system.
How long do you think we have? I know this is the worst question because nobody knows. Nobody knows. I mean, it could happen. It could happen in an event. A strike in Iran could make this thing collapse, right?
Of course it could,
Yeah.
and would.
Yeah. So anything could happen. But realistically speaking, can you give a window of any kind?
I certainly don't see the world being as you and I know it in 2020. As you and I know it, many institutions, many things that we take for granted are going to be gone.
Tell me,
are going to change.
Tell me what that means. 2020, life looks like what? We have universities?
Some are going to be bankrupt. Some of the Ivy League universities will be bankrupt. I would
Harvard?
suspect that Harvard will be bankrupt. Harvard, I suspect, would be the first to go bankrupt.
Why do you say that?
Get out their balance sheet. They've been borrowing money. They've got assets on their balance sheet which are questionable. I got to be careful what I say. I don't want Harvard suing me, but you know.
I hear they have some lawyers.
I suspect they do. They have questionable assets on their balance sheet, and they've been running up a lot of debt. And they've got very high cost structure. It's very high cost to do business at Harvard. They guarantee their professors and their staff wonderful lifestyles. You know what it costs to go to Harvard now? Just to get in the door for 1 year? $53,000 US. That's for 1 year. That's just to get there. Doesn't include the beer, the transportation, the clothes, or anything else. So if you spend 4 years at Harvard, the rate prices are going up. What's it going to cost you? 300 grand?
Why has education skyrocketed like that?
Partly, I'd say largely, because the government put in all these programs, as you know, saying everybody should go to college. Well, I agree. College is good. I had a lot of fun at college. It was wonderful, and I would like to do it again someday in another life. But they made it essentially free for people to go to college, and so masses of people started going to college, and then the government made sure the professors had good lives, and so everybody, this whole system developed the same way the system developed with housing. You know, the government 20 years ago said everybody should have a house. Listen, I agree, everybody should have a house. But unfortunately, somebody has to pay for it. And the government said, okay, it doesn't matter if the person doesn't have good credit. You give him a mortgage anyway. And if you don't give him a mortgage, we're going to stop doing business with you. You remember those laws that they passed? Our Congress passed it. And our president signed it.
America in 2020. Tell me what the average person's life is like.
Well, our standard of living has been flattening for some time, as you know. Well, you're going to start seeing it go down. Food prices are going to go up a lot. I repeat, food prices are going to go up a lot. The government's going to blame it on you, by the way. They're going to blame it on evil speculators. They're going to blame it on everybody except the government policies, which are causing the problems. Food prices will be higher. The cost of just about everything will be higher. Interest rates will be higher. Go ahead.
When you say the price of food's going up, I repeat, it's going up. What does that mean?
Well, I don't know what a loaf of bread costs you right now, but suppose it costs you
New
twice
York,
as much.
$47.
and a cup of coffee costs you $14, right?
Right.
That's not Starbucks.
Yeah,
that's just
that's
regular,
coffee, yeah.
regular stuff. And this stuff costs you who knows what. No, the price of everything you buy is going to go up a lot. Double, triple. I mean, what do you pay for grits?
We're in New York. We don't have grits in New York.
You don't have grits?
No, we don't have grits.
We don't have grits.
Your standard of living is really going to be
Yeah, I mean, I went in to buy I can tell you about ice cream. I think it was like $6 for having. I mean, New York is crazy. New York is crazy.
Well,
so
I
you
know
can't, compare anything
So
in
you're
here.
going to have much higher price. New York's going to be crazier and crazier and crazier, and I would suspect you'll have social unrest in New York. You've already started having social unrest in parts of the world. You've had governments fail. You've had countries fail. Write it down, Glenn. There are going to be more countries failing and more governments failing and a lot more social unrest. Because when the price of food goes, if the price of copper goes up, not many people know. If the price of sugar and wheat goes up, everybody knows that day, and everybody's unhappy.
We're back with Jim Rogers. He's the chairman of Rogers Holdings and author of A Gift to My Children. And quite honestly, this has been a depressing few minutes watching the news with Jim Rogers. You think I'm bad? You say, this guy. Let's start here. At the top of the hour, we were playing this. This is the future of America. And you said, Who did that? And I said, me. And he paused, and he didn't say anything for a while, and he said, what?
Well, I said, I'm afraid it's too late. You know, we're now the largest debtor nation, not in the world, in the history of the world, and our debts are skyrocketing at a geometric rate. They're going up at the rate of trillions of dollars a year. Nobody in Washington seems to understand or care, or certainly not doing anything about it, and it's getting worse. And worst of all, we are destroying in America the savers and investors. All the people who saved and invested all their lives are now getting zero on their savings. They're getting wiped out. And when a nation or a society destroys the people who save and invest, the people who do it right, in favor of the people who did it wrong, the spendthrifts, when you reward the spendthrifts and the layabouts, and you destroy the others, that really destroys your society from within.
Jim, I think I've said this on the air. I hope I have. I gave up a few years ago, maybe 18 months ago, on the idea that we could actually save the country the way it is. I don't know what it looks like on the other side, but it doesn't look like this. And I know that for a lot of people that's crazy town, but that's just the way it is. I mean, math is math is math. But I do still have a belief that if you strengthen the American spirit, if you go back in and try to encourage ingenuity and entrepreneurship and common sense and thrift and all the things that we have destroyed along the way, there's a remnant that remains that can, please say yes, please say that there's a possibility that that's not too late, that you can restart on the other side.
What I'm explaining is we're destroying all those people. We're destroying the people who go to school and study and work hard and try to get good marks and then get a good job and pay off their debts and save their money. We're destroying those people at the expense of other people who don't care.
Okay. Let me, you're probably going to say this is crazy right off the bat, but I'm trying to think, and I don't know how currency works. I have no idea how currency trading works.
I don't either, so go ahead.
Okay, all right. If you think about a redistribution, this comes from an article that I read last week from a big currency destroyer, and he said, you know, the Western world is just it's going to be destroyed. He said, but the emerging markets, they're going to be good. They're going to be good. And I thought, you know, we have a president that thinks of the West as a oppressor nation, and we have a society that is trying to redistribute the wealth, and I'm trying to convince America that when you talk about redistribution of wealth, America is the wealthiest 1%. Even the bottom of the ladder in America is the top 1% everywhere else. Starts here, it goes everywhere else. Trying to put together what the unions, the labor unions are saying. Well, you know, we can, workers of the world unite. Well, you can't have a union that represents workers equally in India and Detroit. That doesn't make sense. You can't do that. So you have to bring things to parity, right? If I took money and bought, and I know you can't because unless you were designing the new system, you wouldn't know what currencies would win. But if you believed in that kind of stuff, couldn't you take $1 million and buy, you know, the yak someplace and buy $1 million of worthless, now emerging country worthless currency compared to the dollar? And if you knew which currencies were going to be relatively stable, couldn't you make a fortune that way?
Absolutely. It's the same with anything else, though, Glenn. If you buy worthless land in rural Texas where they discover oil or they can farm or it turns into a subdivision, you're going to make a fortune. There are currencies now that you can invest in. The U.S. dollar, listen, I don't like saying this. I'm an American citizen. I'm an American taxpayer. But I see what our government is doing to us. I told you before, they're destroying the people who save and invest. at the expense of huge debts that are going higher and higher and higher.
So what's the currency?
Well, I do own the U.S. dollar at the moment. Well, there are Myanmar. Myanmar is at the same place. You want to look it up?
Where is the Myanmar? Where is it? Sounds like some sort of a radish desert animal.
It used to be called Burma. Remember Burma? It used to be called Burma. Myanmar, Burma, today, is where China was in 1978. They said, we've been wrong for the past 49 years. We were crazy. They turned socialist. They closed off to the outside world. They became crazy socialists, et cetera, et cetera. Burma in 1962... Matt,
can I get a pen? I just want to write stuff. Go ahead.
In 1962, Burma was the richest country in Asia. Burma was the richest country in Asia in 62. They closed off. They said, get out of here, the rest of the world. We don't want anything to do with the rest of the world. Now they're the poorest nation in Asia. There are sanctions against them by everybody in the West anyway. But now they've said it didn't work. And we're changing, just as China did in 1978. So if you want to find in one of those countries, you can go to Burma. You can buy that currency. There are things like that.
Is it like China where the currency's closed and trapped?
Semi right now. So you can go there and buy the currency if you want to.
But you can't have that currency here.
It's not convertible. No, it's not. Listen, first of all, until, what is this, December, until November, they had 5 or 6 different currencies in the country. It was a shambles. It was literally a shambles. You could buy this from the bank and you could buy this on the black market. It was different kinds of currency. They're right now unifying the currency. So when I said semi, it's because they're just now getting a proper currency. This is a country that didn't even have a single currency 3 months ago. It was that much chaos. So you find a place like that that's a disaster, which is now opening up. You can make a fortune.
You live in Singapore?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody I know that has, well, I don't know how much you're worth, but I imagine you're worth more than I am.
I doubt it.
But people that have real money have all said, Singapore, 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 get your money out now. Get it to Singapore. Get over to Singapore if you can, because they say that it has a lot of the characteristics that America used to have. Is there any place in the world that's going to be untouched by what's coming?
No. Look, America is the largest economy in the world. Europe, as an entity, is a bigger economy even than America. So when you have problems in the 2 largest economies in the world, everybody's going to be affected. Everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're Myanmar or Singapore or China.
China. Do you think China will fall?
Of course they will.
Yeah.
China sells to the rest of the world.
So if China, I mean, let me ask you this. This is the last question.
Last question. I'm having fun.
I know what it's like being like at a party with me now. This guy's like, oh my gosh. All right. So China, that starts to fall apart. I mean, you have, you're already on the verge of revolution over there. And nobody will talk about. The world always gets to a point similar to this. And after they've tried all these other little tricks, then somebody says, war, that'll pull us out. We headed for World War III?
Probably. I'm not sure it'll be called World War III. I'm not sure how it'll work. But whenever we've had economic distress and turmoil, especially when we have it worldwide, people always get into wars. Now, we've had wars for a few thousand years. Nobody's ever been able to stop them. They're foolish. They're stupid. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of human being life. It doesn't do any good for anybody. Even the winners lose wars in the end. So wars are no good. But politicians always got to blame somebody, and it's very easy to blame the foreigners. You know who they blame? They blame the bankers, because nobody likes successful people. They blame the foreigners, because the foreigners have strange languages, strange religions, strange food. They smell bad. Their food smells bad, those stupid, horrible foreigners. You know who else they blame? Journalists. You, because they say, well, if the journalists didn't write about these things and didn't talk about these problems, we wouldn't have problems. So they blame those 3 groups, and the next thing you know, there's a war. It's always happened that way. I'm not very in favor of war. As I say, it's not good, but
somehow because I could do 2 of the 3 categories, but somehow I believe in this nation today, the Al Jazeera foreign journalist will be safe.
Oh, you think so? Why? Because they're going to move?
In the elite circles in this nation, yeah, they're already holding them up as more sources of truth here in America. Our president is holding them up as sources of truth compared to Fox News or even CNN.
I don't know about all that, but as far as I'm concerned, I thought we have freedom of the press in America, and that everybody should be able to say what they want to, and you should be able to have.
I agree with you.
But I would tell you one problem in America, if quickly, you know, when I go on, I'm interviewed by a lot of people around the world, and when I come on something like you, they say, how can you be on a station like that? When I go on the socialists, they say, how can you be on a station like that? When I go on the nuts, they say, how can you be on a station like that? The problem is we won't talk to each other in America.
I'll talk to anybody, my friend.
I understand, but I'm just telling you, in America,
I know.
In America,
and we've never been like that. We weren't like that before.
We had freedom of the press in the United States, I thought.
We also didn't. I don't remember my parents saying, I can't talk to him because he voted for this guy. I don't remember that. It didn't happen.
I can't believe people say, you were interviewed by the New York Times. There's something wrong with you.
Well, that I'm going to stick with that one.
Jim Rogers, thank you very much.
GBTV. The truth lives here.